Hello and welcome to iHeart Cooking. I am registered dietitian Jennifer Stachler.
And I'm Chef Dugan Wetzel.
We are both from Reid Hospital. The iHeart Cooking program is funded by a grant from the American Heart Association. We are brought to you by Reid Hospital and Healthcare Services, WCTV, and RPNL. Our live audience today is joining from the Birth to 5 group from Richmond. Today we're going to be working with fun recipes with apples. Welcome. We're going to start with our very first recipe, and again, with being fun with apples, being the fall season and having lots of apples around, we're going to do a meal that is with chicken and apples, and we're going to teach you the healthy aspects of maybe pan frying, because we hear so many things about frying and deep frying and how that's so bad for us. Well, we're going to teach you how you can maybe still do that, but make it a little bit of a healthier version. So to begin with, we're going to actually start with our apples and start getting those cooked. And Dugan's going to kind of show you kind of what we're going to do with these apples.
Okay, we have some here already cut up, as you can see. What we did to begin with, we took an apple peeler or a vegetable peeler, anything that's at home will work. You can use a paring knife or whatever you have on hand. Real simple, just take the skin off of it. It'll take you a little bit of time because it's not completely round, so you're kind of dealing with contours and all that difficult stuff. But I'm just going to show you real fast, real quick, just one side until it's nice and clean. And then you're just going to cut it into wedges. And that's what we have here. You'll see they're real thin, real small. You want them to be about bite size. It's going with chicken, so you don't want it to overpower anything. So that's where these are. We're going to go ahead and add a little bit of cinnamon to it. Not too much. Cinnamon's pretty strong.
Give it a lot of that sweet flavor there without going over much. And it's something that we're not adding like brown sugar, which we typically see with some of these dishes, so we're avoiding the amount of carbohydrates that we're adding to it, since the apples actually already are sweetened by the natural sugar of fructose.
Mm-hmm. I'm rolling a lemon right now, if you can see at home. What I'm doing is I'm kind of loosening up the juices. Makes it easier to squeeze when you're using fresh lemons. To get lemon juice, it makes it softer. I always put my hand underneath it to catch any seeds that kind of pop out as it's kind of draining. As you can see, I caught one, but then the rest of the lemon juice actually falls in, so you're not having to worry about any seeds or anything popping up on you.
And the one reason we are really putting lemon juice with this is because we don't want the apples to turn brown. And that's something after you cut up apples, many of you probably experience, they have a tendency of turning very brown once they're opened up to the oxygen. So we don't want that to happen, because what's the fun of mushy brown apples when you're eating a meal?
Yeah, the ascorbic acid in lemons, limes, anything with any type of acid in it, it actually combats, or it works with the oxygen first before the enzymes in the apple do. So it kind of prevents the oxygen from penetrating into the apple. So it slows it down a little bit, keeps them fresh for a little bit longer.
And to be honest, that little lemon juice that you're going to have in there actually pairs really well with the apple and the chicken later in the dish.
Okay. So now that those are nice and tossed, cinnamon's incorporated, we're going to add a little bit of butter and a little oil to our pan. We're doing this one.
So it's about a teaspoon of oil and a teaspoon of butter that we're adding. The butter is going to be a no salt butter, because again, being more heart healthy, we want to make sure we're avoiding the amount of sodium we're getting into our dish as possible. So we're doing a no salt butter. And again, that olive oil, those are going to have a lot of the good fats in there, a lot of the polyunsaturated fats. So that's something that typically when you do a lot of sauteing of apples, you use all butter. Well, here we're cutting that out by adding some of that oil in there, getting some of those good fats in there, so we are incorporating more of the heart healthy aspect.
For this recipe, we're actually using a semi-sweet apple. This is a Gala apple. The recipe calls for a Braeburn apple. It's similar family. There's over 2,500 different apples out there. You don't want to use anything overly sweet like a Granny Smith, because it kind of just, or overly tart like a Granny Smith, excuse me, because then it'll kind of counteract with the chicken and all the ingredients in it. So
I think we're warmed up, so we're gonna get those apples in there. We're gonna have to start cooking those. The reason we're doing these apples first is because we wanna make sure that they get cooked through before we start the chicken. If we would start the chicken first, those are gonna cook quickly, as you're gonna see here in a little bit. So we wanna make sure we're giving enough time for these apples to cook.
And while we're kind of waiting on the apples here, this recipe calls to take your chicken breast and pound them out to about a 1/4 inch thickness. There's a couple ways you can do that. I have a meat mallet right here. I use the flat side without the spikes because it kind of helps separate the chicken without shredding it to pieces. If you don't have one of these at home, you can actually use a pan like the one we're using here. This is a lot bigger than that one, but you can use a smaller version of this. Lay it flat on your cutting board. We have parchment paper that you can use. You cover it so when you hit it, it doesn't spray everywhere. Another trick that I like to use is actually a little Ziploc bag. Keep it open, don't close it, because if you close it and hit it with it, it's going to make a really loud popping noise because all the air is trying to get out. But if you lay it flat and put the chicken inside, it catches all that juice inside, so you don't have a mess at all to deal with. So it's really, really convenient, actually. So
I don't know, like Dugan said, you can use one of these pans, and literally you're going to be like pounding it, and it makes a really loud noise. So that's kind of why we opted not to do it right now, because it would be quite loud. At home, I was making this dish, and my daughter, who's only a couple months old, was sitting right there, and I was actually taking a roller, doing the same thing and kind of pounding it because I was using all of my dishes, and she was very startled. She kind of looked at me like, "What are you doing?" So that's something that it is very loud, so that's why we opted out of not doing that.
Okay. So while we're letting the apples cook here, this is the chicken that we were talking about. It's all a 1/4 inch thick. It's real thin, I guess. It's very, very small, very easy to cook, quick to cook. While we're waiting on the apples, I went ahead and mixed our seasonings together. For this, we're using a blend of Mrs. Dash, no salt, and pepper. Real simple. All you're going to do is coat both sides of it. I like to press on top, kind of adheres the seasoning to it.
And that Mrs. Dash, like Dugan said, it is a no salt added seasoning, so you're not getting any sodium, but you're getting that flavor from there. And there's also a little pepper in there as well. So while he's kind of doing that, we're actually going to start getting this pan ready for the chicken to go into. And again, because we're doing this pan fried, a lot of people think, ooh, that's not very healthy for us, that frying aspect. Yes, that's something we kind of avoid, but every now and then it's not bad. To make it a little bit more healthier option, we're adding, again, 1 teaspoon of the no salt butter, and we're adding a teaspoon of olive oil, again, to get more of those incorporating good fats. Now, when you're pan frying or deep frying, olive oil is not a typical oil you want to use. Dugan can kind of explain a little bit more about the oil while I'm putting it in there.
They have a different smoke point is essentially what it's called. Smoke points, what that refers to is the amount of heat. If you use an olive oil, you're not allowed to get up to the temperatures like 350 degrees. You can, but once you put your food in it, it's going to burn it almost instantly, and it's going to leave a really bitter flavor on that batter or whatever you're cooking with. So you want to use an oil like a grapeseed oil or a walnut oil, something that it'll have a higher smoke point on it. Most of the time, those oils will show you on the back of the bottle. It'll tell you, how high you can go, just as kind of a point of reference, so I can use this for higher temperature cooking, or can't I? Another one that you can use is a canola oil. That holds temperature pretty well. It's fairly cheap. It doesn't have a huge flavor to it, so it's not really going to incorporate into anything that you make. So, okay, so this is all ready.
And a little bit more about this olive oil. This is extra virgin olive oil, meaning it is that pure olive oil. Now, some other olive oils you see out there are like light olive oil or just olive oil. When they say that, a lot of times when it's the light olive oil, they're adding like canola oil with that because it's not completely all made out of that almond. Where the olive oil is a little bit better, but if you want the full flavor, the full aspect of the mono and polyunsaturated fats from that olive oil, you want that extra virgin olive oil. We're just gonna wait till that warms up and that butter melts in there to start actually pan frying those chicken. Okay, that oil or that butter's melted, so we want to make sure this is actually nice and warm before we actually start putting the chicken in there, because if it's not warm and you start heating up or cooking that chicken, you're going to find out that it's not going to probably cook as well, and it's probably going to stick more likely to the bottom of that pan. A little bit more about apples while we're still waiting for this to heat up. Some nutrition information. Apples are very good and are very high in vitamin C. So that's something typically we get a lot of vitamin C from our apples, and most of the time we want to eat it with the peeling on, because most of that vitamin C is found directly under the peeling. So a lot of times if we're peeling the apples like we did do here before, you're going to be eliminating some of that vitamin. Where if you do like the peeling on there, you'll see a little bit on some of these. They don't have to be completely peeled, but if you want that extra vitamin C in the peeling on there, you can add it. Also, apples have a good amount of soluble and insoluble fibers that can help reduce cholesterol, and again, that's heart healthy to help reduce that cholesterol aspect. So some good nutrition here with apples. As you can see, Dugan's now putting that chicken in there. I don't know if many of you heard the little sizzle there. That's what you want to hear when you're actually putting that chicken into there. And you'll more likely with this dish have to do 2 different batches of the cooking. So we're going to do the first batch here, and then we're going to add the second batch. So a lot of times, many of us at home do not have this big a pan. So it does take a little bit more time. It's a little bit bigger than some of that burner too. Mm-hmm. Now we're starting to hear that chicken start to cook. So that means typically, because we already pounded these more so they're thinner, it's only going to have to cook for 1 to 2 minutes, or 2 to 3 minutes, excuse me, on each side. So something that's very quick, and this is a dish that you can make probably less than 30 minutes. And being busy lives, a lot of times if you have kids at home, they want to eat right away, you get home from work and school. This is something you can make very quickly, and it's something, again, that's going to have so much of those health benefits there for your family. So as you can see at home, maybe it's starting to cook on top, and now we're just waiting for the other side to cook as well. Dugan, do you know any good way of telling when chicken's actually done?
It'll actually, the inside of the chicken will run clear. I know a lot of people have a problem or an issue at home, either overcooking or undercooking. The easiest way that I've learned through just practice, when you cook a chicken breast and you kind of poke it, if you know it's not done, it's kind of mushy. You know, you can push in a little bit more than normal. When it's actually finished, it's really firm. You'll know that the outside is completely cooked. It has a little bit of give, but not a whole lot. It bounces right back. And you'll see kind of clear liquids coming from the sides or from the top of the chicken breast itself. That's when you know that your chicken breast is done. You can go ahead and take it off and just let it sit for a couple minutes to kind of rest.
So our apples are done, so while this chicken's getting done, I'm just going to put it in a dish, set it off to the side, and we'll use it once all the apples are completely done. And one thing you want to do with this chicken, after it's done cooking, you don't want to get rid of those juices in there, because they were actually going to use it at the end of the dish. And so that's something that the next batch we'll probably add just a little bit more butter, a little bit olive oil, make sure we're getting both of them cooked evenly. And then we're going to save those juices for later. And that's something we're going to have a little broth that goes over them. So don't get rid of those juices after you're done cooking between each batch.
There we go.
There, now at home, if you can kind of see that, I know it's hard for you out in the audience to kind of view this, but that chicken, as Dugan's kind of shown you, it's got a nice brown texture to each side of it. That's what you want to see when this chicken's about done, is that browning factor. So as you can see, it's not completely being fried. It's not like we have a breading and we're completely deep frying it, but it is going to be a little bit of that pan fry. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's going to give it that nice crust. It's going to give it an extra flavor. It's, you know, it's not the fried that everybody likes, but yeah, it does give it an extra flavor to it.
A good option to try it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're there.
So he's just going to put that off on a plate, off to the side, while he gets ready for the second batch of chicken to cook that as well. And once he gets that started, we'll clean up and get started with the next recipe.
Come on. There we go. Now, if you hear out there, adding new oil to it, it kind of quieted it down. That's one thing. The oil is regular temperature. You want to get it up to that hot heat again. So you don't want to go ahead and automatically put your second batch in there. You want to give it a little bit of time to heat back up to where the original temperature was. So then it'll cook it naturally. You're not sitting it in oil so it gets really soggy and kind of, you know, develops that flavor. So about another minute or two and it'll be ready to go.
And also something that's kind of good to know when you're at home, because this is something I experienced a lot of times when I did this recipe, is that if you have a smaller dish and you have this on very high heat and you put that chicken in there, do not be surprised when it kind of starts spitting at you. And be careful, because it's really, really hot oil and you don't want to burn yourself. So just be aware that that might happen. So that's something to not just drop the chicken in there and lay it in there softly, so you don't have that happen to you. There you know, good sign that that oil's ready to, nice and hot and ready for that chicken to be put in.
I'll show you at home here real quick. This is the easiest way I've found to lay it in there instead of plopping it. I kind of just drag it and then slowly sit it in there so that it's not spraying everywhere. It's not causing any flare up. You know, very simple.
So while this next one's cooking, again, at home it'd be 2 to 3 minutes on each side. We're going to clear up our area and get ready for this next recipe for you. So our next recipe that we are actually going to be doing is geared more to the kiddos. And actually it's more like an afternoon snack, but adults can have the snack just as well. What we're doing is a peanut nutty caramel graham rich. So that's something that it's a nice snack again for kiddos. You get them, they can help make this, but it's good also for adults as well. So one thing we're going to be using, you can either use a graham cracker, and that's something where you have a low-fat graham cracker. Again, get some of those fats out of there, especially the big one we want to watch for is trans fats that can be sometimes in our baked goods. And the other one we're actually using is wheat tortilla. So we're going to be using both of those so you can see two different ways of actually making these dishes. We're going to also have the apples here. You can kind of use any apple that you like. If you like the tartness of Granny Smith, you can use those. You can use Reds, Red Delicious, whatever you prefer. But we're using the same apples as the previous dish. Now, the little spread that we're adding here, as you can probably tell from the title, we got some peanut butter and we have some low-fat or sugar-free caramel sauce. So that's something that peanut butter, the great thing about it, it's got protein and it's got the good fats. We got the mono and polyunsaturated fats that are good for our heart. So with that, being the protein, if kiddos have this maybe when they come home from school, it can kind of maybe last their hunger or make sure they're not as hungry until dinner. So it kind of gives them that fullness feeling when they get home from school, because typically a lot of them are hungry. Now the caramel sauce, again, you probably want the more sugar-free, reduce some more of those carbohydrates, also fats that can be found in some of the regular caramel syrups. But you just kind of mix those two together and it gives it that nice sweet kind of spread on there. So those two are actually already mixed together on here. And one thing that we're going to do to kind of show you how to do this is we're going to take an apple, and to make sure that it actually spreads across the whole graham cracker, we're actually going to cut the apple. So get you a nice slice here. Actually cut the whole apple like this, so that way you have it covering the whole entire slice. Again, we're going to be leaving that peeling on so we have more vitamin C. We're getting more of that fiber aspect that's good for helping to reduce the cholesterol and heart healthy. So we'll just cut this apple here. Make sure you watch out for when you get to the core. You want to avoid the core because, again, nobody's going to want the hard middle of the seeds. As you can see, I'm not the best cutter at this, so you might have this at home as well. Sometimes if you have a slicer at home, that might be better just to help slice it, instead of having the knife where you're more likely maybe to cut yourself. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to take this graham cracker, you're going to take some of this peanut butter and caramel sauce, and you're just going to spread it on top of that graham cracker. And then once you have that spread it on the graham cracker, you're just going to take one of these slices of apple and just put that on top of there. And that way you have a nice little snack for them at home, quick and easy to do. You can even bring something like this to work and make sure if you need a snack in the middle of the day, help you keep that fullness sensation with that extra protein from the peanut butter in there. And also the fiber from the apple. And it's a nice little snack for you. With Dugan over here, we'll kind of go back to him before we finish this up because he was making this broth.
I went ahead, after I finished cooking off this chicken, I added 1 cup of a low sodium or no salt chicken broth to the pan that we cooked all the chicken in. It's kind of getting up the bits and pieces that are stuck in the bottom of the pan. That's your flavor. That's where it's at right there. And I also added a teaspoon of lemon zest. Same lemon that we used to add to the apples. I just went ahead. There's my zester. I have a zester myself, real small, real simple. You can pick them up at any store, fairly inexpensive. You just take the outside edge of whatever you're wanting to zest, and it'll kind of fall little pieces everywhere. It's kind of neat, and you'll know when you're done on that spot because it's white. With the lemon, it's yellow until you zest it all the way through, and then it turns white. So you just move to another space. If you don't have one of these at home, a lot of people's cheese graters actually have that setting on it. Some of them have 3 or 4 sides to it, and that's one of the options. It's really thin. It's very pokey, so don't rub your fingers on it because that one might hurt a little bit. So all we're doing right now, we're just kind of letting that simmer, kind of letting the bits and pieces come off the bottom of it, and we're going to let it reduce. We're not using any salt. So by using a reduction, it kind of just enhances and increases the flavors of the dish. That way you get all that chicken wonderfulness. So yeah.
It's usually going to take about 5 minutes. Again, kind of depends on how high you have your heat and things after you're done cooking that chicken. So while we're going to let that reduce down, we're going to finish these little graham wedges. Instead of using the graham crackers, we're going to use these tortillas. And that's something that these are really easy to walk around with and eat. So that's something that, you just take the peanut butter and the caramel sauce, and you kind of just spread that on the tortilla here. And it doesn't take very much. A nice thin layer on here will be fine. So after we have that all spread around our tortilla there, we're just going to add the apples there. And I kind of cut these apples up just because it's going to be easier to actually roll that than actually the graham cracker where we had the whole apple on there. So I just had these cut up, and then you can kind of just roll this. And it makes a nice little snack and tortilla where you can actually, if you don't want the whole thing, cut it in half. And you have nice 2 little snacks.
The nice part about these is with all the peanut butter, when you roll them up, it prevents the oxygen from getting into the apple because you can't get in there. So you can actually make these 2 or 3 days in advance, roll them up, put them in or wrap them up and close them, put them in your refrigerator. Whenever you're hungry, come in, just grab one, eat it. It's simple, doesn't take much time at all to make, and you can have snack just like that. So
quick, easy thing to actually do with snacks or lunches, or if you're going to school or work and having these in there as well. Great easy breakfast idea if you're on the go.
Absolutely. So when we come back, we'll actually have the finished chicken dish here. We're going to let this evaporate a little more, bring the flavors out a little bit. So. So I'm going to show you at home here. When we're talking about reduction, what we're saying is, we're reducing the liquid. We started with a cup. We're actually down to about maybe a third cup. If you look in the pan here, you can kind of see this line right here. That's where we actually started with all our liquid, and we've already evaporated and reduced it, concentrating all that flavor down to about a third cup. So I would say at that point, we're done. We'll go ahead and take it off the stove. Let that cool a little bit.
Might want to show the audience there too, since again it's harder to see up here.
So while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and just put it back in this cup.
Just for pouring purposes, it's a little bit easier.
Hopefully not spill it. There we go. Alrighty. Go ahead.
We'll kind of actually show you what the actual dish is going to look like. So you actually put one of these chicken breasts on there. You'll put a little bit of this sauce right over the top, just to give it a little bit of flavor. You don't need very much. Just going to give that moisture to it. And then that's what we're going to add some of the apples on top of that. If I can get that last one off there. And that's what the dish is actually going to look like. This pairs very, very well with green beans, broccoli, a nice salad, maybe some sauteed peppers, onions, something that's going to add some more of the color aspect to it. Because as you can see with the apples and the chicken, it's a lot of white. So we want some other colors in there as well. We want a nice mixture of colors because all those different pigments have good nutrients in there for us. So that's something that would pair well with something like this. Now when I made it the other night, I just had some green beans on the side of here, made it nice and colorful, and got you some vegetables in there as well. So now we'll start actually sampling some of these dishes. We'll cut some of these up for our live audience to sample. Thank you for tuning in to iHeart Cooking, a program that is funded by the American Heart Association. We also want to thank our live audience, the Birth to 5 group. We hope you enjoyed the information that we provided you today, and you'll try the recipes at home.
If you have any questions about the American Heart Association, you can visit heart.org or reidhospital.org/iheartcooking.
We'll see you next month.